I hauled a dazed Edsel up by his cuffs. Asia did the same with Sigella. The demons charged us again. Tony and Orc went down shrieking under a pile of them. Sal and 2 guys from his detail broke and dashed down a side tunnel, with gator faces in hot pursuit. JJ didn't move, feet planted solidly. He squeezed off one deadly shot after the other, shattering demonic skulls and splattering ichor on the walls. Ganjamin was screaming and blazing away in the general direction of the green-skinned demons, useless, as JJ had warned. Mustache buried a rock pick in a gator face and got his guts opened up by a return sweep of its claws. Sancia shot the thing in the eye as it buried its teeth in the dying man. We were losing. I looked around frantically for an escape route and spotted a small tunnel almost hidden in the shadows. "This way!" I screamed. "This way!" I thrust Edsel at Townie and shoved them both toward the tunnel, then used one round to slow down a demon closing on Asia. Sancia downed it with another shot, then lunged past me, followed by the survivors of the dive. JJ, his face bleeding profusely, staggered over. I used my last shot to drop the demon behind him. The only man left in the room was Gook. "Noon!" I screamed. "You go!" he shouted back. "Come on!" More demons crowded in, surrounding the little Vietnamese. "You go!" he shouted again. Then he screamed something in his own language and waded into the pack. I fled down the corridor. The roar of the fight behind rang in my ears. An ashen taste of cowardice and defeat filled my mouth. Gook lay bleeding profusely on the cold stone, surrounded by dead demons, his vision blurred from searing pain shooting through his body from dozens of wounds. I hope I bought enough time. My father would have been proud of how I fought with the sword, just like the old priest showed me when I was a boy. Breathing hurt, but he knew there would be no more running. He'd been running since the stinking Kong ran him out of his country. No more running for Nyung. The tunnel seemed darker now. I don't want to die alone in the dark. You don't have to, a voice said in perfect Vietnamese. Nyung struggled to barely turn his head. A man in a dark coat was kneeling beside him. Nyung's eyes widened. The man met his gaze. I am the salesman. Call me Johnny. What do you want? To live to be an old man, with many grandchildren. Nyung laughed and tasted blood. Some things are not Johnny's to do or to give, not even for a brave warrior. Nyung suddenly realized that Johnny was speaking perfect Vietnamese. Nyung coughed, wincing in pain. Thank you for not leaving me alone in the dark. Johnny inclined his head only slightly. If you will trade me your sword, I can do one thing for you. My sword? Johnny will never take unless you give. The salesman's voice was soft and reassuring. The pain gnawing at Nyung abated, and his breathing grew easier. But the sword is needed elsewhere this day. Nyung relaxed his grip on the sword. What will you do for me? Johnny will stop the pain. We will leave now, not alone and not in the dark. And Johnny will take you to your ancestors. Nyung allowed himself a smile. Right now, that seems like a good deal. He looked into Johnny's eyes and let go of the sword. Johnny took the sword with his right hand, then gently placed his left on Nyung's forehead. Nyung heard birds chirping, then the sound of a waterfall. The air was scented with jasmine, and the sun felt warm on his face. We ran flat out. The tunnel changed levels and direction, bisected by dozens of side tunnels. Asia fell behind, her leg giving out. I grabbed her up, taking her considerable weight on my shoulder. We ran a 3-legged race for our lives. I had no idea where we were when we hit a big chamber with a round shaft in the middle of the room, dropping off to God knows where. People fell to the floor, sobbing in terror and out of breath. Sagella struggling in Ralph and Ganjamin's grip until Ralph put a knife to her throat. Edsel grinned mirthlessly at me. "You are meat and wine for the Shada table," he hissed at me. "Run as much as you want. The demons will find me. I am Shadalka. I am linked to them." "What do we do?" I looked at Sansia and JJ. "He's still under arrest," Sansia said. "We can't hold him," JJ said. "He says those things are drawn to him. They were waiting for us in there." Edsel laughed. "Don't forget to read me my rights. I have the right to have you all slaughtered, to rend your flesh with my teeth, to pour your blood as wine for my masters." "Fools!" Edsel shrieked. "Your courts and prisons will be devoured like all your world. Come, demons! I invoke!" A rock hammer lodged point first in the back of Edsel's skull. He stiffened in a paroxysm of agony, then toppled into the shaft and disappeared into the depths. "Cop told you you had the right to remain silent," Phil huffed. "Guess you didn't have the ability." We looked at Phil in shock. Phil shrugged. He was management anyway. Sagella wailed and sank to her knees. Before our eyes, she shriveled into something small and cat-like. Her bells and beads formed an ornate collar. Asia threw her coat over Sagella, wrapping it tightly around the animal before it could move. The sound of applause broke the silence from somewhere behind us. We spun. Johnny strode out of the tunnel mouth, his bright eyes fastened on me. "Good and good." "Help us," I said. He spread his hands. "What do you need? Do you have things to trade?" "We need to get out of here," Phil added. "No safe place during the Shada, unless you make it safe." Johnny shook his head. "Otherwise, out of frying pans and into fires you go." "How?" Sansia demanded. "Information?" Johnny grinned. "You have something that I want, too." "What?" Sansia eyed him suspiciously. Johnny whipped a sheet of paper out of his pocket and studied it.